18-year-old Caitlyn Arquette, a popular honor student from Albuquerque, New Mexico, had just graduated from Highland High School in June 1989 and was preparing to attend the University of New Mexico, with aspirations of becoming a doctor. While working as a supervisor at Pier 1 Imports and taking college courses, Caitlyn seemed to be on a promising path toward a bright future. That summer, she made a bold decision to move into an apartment with her boyfriend, 26-year-old Dung Nguyen, a Vietnamese immigrant. Although her family initially welcomed Dung despite being unaware of the significant age gap, Caitlyn began revealing troubling concerns about their relationship to her mother, Lois Duncan, a well-known author. Just days before her death, Caitlyn confided in Lois that she intended to break up with Dung after a heated argument, even asking her mother to cover for her if Dung called, saying she was spending the night at a friend's house. On the evening of July 16, 1989, Caitlyn left a friend's home and drove a red Ford Tempo through Albuquerque, unaware that it would be her final drive. Around 10:50 p.m., while stopped at a red light, an unidentified assailant from another car shot Caitlyn twice in the head, causing her car to veer off the road and crash into a light pole. Initially believed to be a car accident, the horrifying truth soon emerged. It was a murder. Lois received a devastating call from the hospital and rushed to be by her daughter's side, only to learn that Caitlyn was in a coma, her injuries too severe to recover from. 5 hours later, Caitlyn was declared brain dead, and on July 17th, her family faced the unimaginable loss of a daughter who had barely stepped into adulthood. The police began investigating the case as a random act of violence, a tragic instance of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But Lois was unconvinced. Dung, who claimed to have been home alone during the shooting, seemed unaware of Caitlyn's fate when questioned by detectives. However, Lois's suspicions deepened when a note allegedly written by Caitlyn was found in their apartment, a note that some believed was forged. Lois discovered that Caitlyn had recently learned of Dung's involvement in a staged car insurance scam tied to a Vietnamese criminal organization and planned to expose it. Her investigation revealed that Dung and Caitlyn had been part of a staged car accident in Southern California, a scheme that hinted at a much larger network of criminal activity. Lois also uncovered unsettling details, including the presence of Dung's associates at their apartment the night Caitlyn was killed and phone calls made to a Vietnamese paralegal connected to the scam shortly after her murder. Despite Lois's findings, the police continued to insist that Caitlyn's murder was random. In January 1990, law enforcement made a breakthrough, arresting Juvenal Escobedo, Miguel Garcia, and Dennis Martinez based on informant tips. The trio was charged with Caitlyn's murder, but by 1991, the case fell apart due to inconsistent witness statements and insufficient evidence, leaving Lois disheartened but undeterred. In 1992, Lois published Who Killed My Daughter?, a deeply personal book chronicling her relentless pursuit of justice and the unanswered questions surrounding Caitlyn's death. The case went cold until 1995, when private investigator Pat Caristo, hired by Lois, uncovered new evidence pointing to a man named Paul Apodaca. Apodaca had a history of violent behavior and was reportedly seen near the scene of the crime on the night of the shooting. Yet, even with this lead, the case languished in limbo for years. In a shocking twist, decades later, in 2021, Apodaca, now 53 years old, confessed to Caitlyn's murder, along with 2 other homicides. His confession included chilling details only the killer would know, finally bringing clarity to a case that haunted Caitlyn's family for over 3 decades. In 2024, Apodaca pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in Caitlyn's case, officially closing one of New Mexico's most enduring mysteries. Tragically, Lois passed away in 2016, never witnessing the resolution of her daughter's murder. Yet, her unwavering dedication to uncovering the truth kept Caitlyn's case alive for over 30 years, ensuring that her daughter's story would not be forgotten. Lois's relentless pursuit of justice, combined with her belief that something sinister had been overlooked, ultimately led to the long-overdue reckoning of a man who had evaded accountability for far too long, providing some sense of closure for Caitlyn's loved ones and a reminder of a mother's unbreakable love and determination. 16-year-old Carrie Lynn Nixon lived with her family in Osable Forks, New York, a small, tight-knit community nestled in the Adirondack Mountains. The town was known for its friendly, family-oriented atmosphere and the rare occurrence of violent crimes. In fact, anything out of the ordinary tended to attract immediate attention. However, in 1987, the entire town was shaken to its core when Carrie mysteriously disappeared. Carrie was an above-average student, the pitcher on her high school softball team, an avid singer, and an aspiring writer. She was the kind of teenager who seemed unlikely to invite trouble. On the evening of June 22, 1987, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Carrie left home to run an errand for her father, Gary. She was headed to Thomas's Country Store, a small market located a few blocks away, to purchase groceries. After completing the errand, she left the market at 9:55 p.m. and began the short walk home. As Carrie made her way along Palmer Street, a familiar path she had taken countless times, she greeted a neighbor at 10:05 p.m. But by 10:10 p.m., a group of boys walked by and noticed only an empty street. In the span of just 5 minutes, and a mere 700 feet from her home, Carrie had vanished without a trace. Carrie's mother, Kathy, vividly remembers that her daughter had been walking down a street she had known her whole life, and something terrible happened. When Carrie was missing from her bed at 6 a.m. the next morning, Kathy's immediate reaction was one of pure terror. "It has been a nightmare ever since," she later recalled. Once Carrie was reported missing, authorities launched a large-scale air and ground search covering a 50-mile radius around Osable Forks. Volunteers from the local fire departments and nearby Air Force Base helped comb the area. The authorities followed up on hundreds of leads and conducted numerous searches, but despite their efforts, no trace of Carrie was found. Captain Robert Liu of the New York State Police remarked that it was as if Carrie had walked off the face of the earth. During the investigation, investigator Richard Seepeck of the New York State Police uncovered letters Carrie had written to a friend. In them, she had expressed a desire to leave Osable Forks once she turned 18 and mentioned considering places like Hawaii, Florida, or California. These letters led Seepeck to theorize that Carrie might have chosen to run away. However, Captain Liu disagreed with this hypothesis. He argued that the circumstances pointed to an abduction. Carrie had been wearing sweats and had $20 from her father, which she used to buy groceries. If she were planning to run away, Captain Liu reasoned, she wouldn't have dressed so casually or used the money her father had given her for groceries. Additionally, when authorities searched Carrie's room, they found money there that she had not taken. To him, these clues suggested Carrie had been abducted. Gary, Carrie's father, also believed she had not run away. He was certain that someone must have pulled up alongside Carrie while she was walking home that night, though he wasn't sure if she knew the person. "Somebody picked her up," he said. "I'm 100% positive she didn't run away." The family had a close relationship, and they often spent time together, such as bowling, which made the idea of Carrie running away seem implausible. As winter 1987 approached, the investigation had reached a dead end. However, in November of that year, a letter arrived from an anonymous writer in Flint, Michigan. The letter urged authorities to search for Carrie in the Utahville, South Carolina area. Though the lead seemed tenuous, Carrie's family decided to follow up on it. They traveled to Utahville and posted flyers throughout the small town. To their surprise, a local woman named Shirley Canapel remembered speaking with a shy 16-year-old girl a few weeks prior, who had introduced herself as Carrie. The woman recognized Carrie's name when she saw the missing person flyers and was convinced the girl she met in Utahville was indeed Carrie. At the request of New York State Police, Shirley underwent hypnosis to try to retrieve more details of the encounter. In a hypnotic state, she recalled a hot day when a red-haired girl came up to her and introduced herself as Carrie. When asked where she was from, the girl replied, "New York." When Shirley asked if she was down here to stay, the girl said yes. Shirley believed that the girl she met was a runaway, noting that Carrie appeared shy and avoided certain questions. Despite Shirley's memory during hypnosis, investigators were unable to confirm the sighting. They tracked down the girl who had been with Carrie, but found that she could not recall meeting anyone named Carrie. Additionally, despite investigating over 70 reported sightings, conducting more than 1,500 interviews and reviewing 200 unidentified bodies. Authorities were still no closer to finding Carrie or determining her whereabouts. The case seemed to reach another dead end, but in March 1990, an unexpected development occurred. Family friends saw a video of a New Kids on the Block concert filmed in Los Angeles, California, on June 5, 1989. Among the crowd of teenage fans, they spotted a girl who looked strikingly similar to Carrie. Gary and Kathy were initially shocked by the resemblance, and after watching the video repeatedly, they began to believe that the girl might indeed be their daughter. Investigator CPEC also reviewed the video and, upon the first viewing, recognized the girl as Carrie. The enhanced photo comparison between Carrie and the girl in the video revealed many similarities, including hair length, hair color, and facial features. Carrie had multiple earrings in her right ear, and the girl in the video had the same distinctive earring pattern, which was something unique about Carrie. However, after efforts to reach the girl in the video, it was determined that she was not Carrie. The girl in the video was identified as Lynette Melankin, who was living in California at the time. Despite this setback, the investigation continued until January 1994, when a breakthrough came. Robert Anthony Jones, a man involved in multiple bank robberies, became a suspect. In 1993, he had been arrested for 4 robberies across northeastern New York and Maine. During questioning about the robberies, Jones' wife, Teresa, revealed that her husband had confessed to killing Carrie. Jones had been living in Bar Harbor, Maine, at the time of Carrie's disappearance, but had returned to Osable Forks that week to visit family. He had seen Carrie while buying beer at the local market, followed her, and abducted her at gunpoint. Jones took Carrie to a remote cabin in Jay, New York, where he assaulted her for several hours. When he tried to strangle her, it didn't work, so he shot her in the chest. The next morning, he buried her body in a wooded area near the cabin. Afterward, he returned to Osable Forks, where he settled with his family. Every year following the murder, he took his family to the site of the grave for a picnic, checking to see if the grave had been disturbed. On January 28, 1994, Jones led investigators to the shallow grave where Carrie's remains were recovered. Her clothing, shoes, and the groceries she had purchased that night were also found. In February 1994, Jones pleaded guilty to first-degree kidnapping and second-degree murder. As part of a plea deal, he was sentenced to 18 years to life in prison to run concurrently with his earlier sentence for the bank robberies. Teresa, Jones' wife, received 2 years probation for her role in the robberies. She later divorced Jones. After serving time in federal prison, he was transferred to a state facility in 2005. Jones has been denied parole multiple times, with his most recent hearing taking place in 2023. Carrie's family established a scholarship fund in her memory, but their lives continued to be marked by tragedy. In December 2007, Carrie's younger brother Jonathan passed away after a battle with ALS. He was just 29 years old and was survived by a daughter, who was named Carrie Lynn Nixon in honor of her late aunt. Gary, Carrie's father, passed away in 2011 at the age of 63. Though he had spent years living with the pain of losing Carrie, his passing marked the end of an era for the family. While Carrie's case was finally solved, it did little to ease the pain her family endured. Robert Anthony Jones remains in prison, and his parole hearings continue to be met with opposition from the community of Osable Forks. On the night of September 30th, 1987, a pickup truck was found on the side of a remote Virginia back road, its engine running, keys still in the ignition, and transmission in park. When a passing driver stopped to investigate, he discovered the body of the truck's owner, 45-year-old Kay Hall, crushed under one of the truck's tires. Authorities believed that Kay had been run over by the rear left tire of the truck, and when the driver attempted to stop, the vehicle skidded, pushing her body into the position where it was ultimately found. Initial investigations led authorities to suspect Kay's husband, Bob, as the killer. They believed he had a financial motive. Kay had inherited $50,000 on the same day she was killed, and Bob stood to collect part of it. Moreover, he had no alibi for the time of her death. Bob, however, insisted on his innocence and agreed to be interviewed in hopes of clearing his name. Kay and Bob had lived and worked together near the Chesapeake Bay on the Corotoman River, where they initially enjoyed success in their oyster farming business. Before their marriage in July 1985, they had known each other for more than a decade. They had become closer when Bob was arrested on drug charges, and Kay had written to him while he was in prison. After his release in 1982, they began dating. However, shortly after they started their oyster business, financial difficulties began to strain their marriage. The tension was exacerbated by both partners drinking heavily. Kay confided in her mother, Esther, that she and Bob were unhappy together. She even told her friend, Barbara, that she had been physically abused by Bob and had been seen with black eyes and bruises. Despite these problems, the couple tried to repair their relationship, and Kay even mentioned they were planning to attend marriage counseling. Then, on the same day she was killed, Kay received an inheritance of $50,000. She deposited half of the inheritance into her bank account and later that evening attended a party at the local country club with Bob. There, she was described as the life of the party. However, as the night wore on and the alcohol flowed, tensions flared between the couple. Kay became upset when Bob tipped the bartender generously, and she decided to leave the party without him. She drove home in her pickup truck, while Bob accepted a ride home from friends. Around 9:55 p.m., just minutes after Kay left the country club, passers-by found her body. The discovery of Kay's body showed signs of a struggle inside her truck, indicating that she had fought to maintain control of the vehicle. There were no signs of a random act of violence. Kay's purse was found in the truck with nothing stolen, and there was no evidence of sexual assault. An autopsy revealed that she was highly intoxicated at the time of her death, and this, combined with her troubled marriage and financial issues, led to Bob becoming the prime suspect. Bob had no alibi for the time between 8:45 p.m. when he was dropped off at home and the time of Kay's death around 9:55 p.m. Authorities noted that he had an approximately 1-hour window to commit the crime. However, it was unclear whether he could have traveled the necessary distance and returned home in time to make a phone call at 9:47 p.m., just moments after Kay's death. Bob's timeline was highly questionable. Shortly after 8 p.m., Kay had left the country club, and Bob was dropped off at home at 8:45 p.m. Kay's body was discovered about 2 miles from the country club, in the opposite direction from their home, and about 14 miles away from where Bob had been dropped off. Investigators attempted to drive the route Bob would have taken that night, and it took only 17 minutes at a normal speed or 24 minutes at a leisurely pace. If Bob had left home by 9:30 p.m., he would have had roughly 25 minutes to find Kay, kill her, and return home in time to make the phone call. This tight timeline raised doubts about Bob's innocence. Though Bob remained the prime suspect, authorities did not arrest him immediately. However, new information provided by viewers following the case's airing led to Bob's arrest in January 1990. A key piece of evidence involved Bob's friend, William Carter, who had recently been involved in an attempted murder case. Carter had shot his wife and immediately drove to another property to establish an alibi, which investigators believe gave Bob the idea to kill Kay and then return home to make a phone call, mirroring Carter's actions. Authorities concluded that Bob had a window of about 20 minutes to locate and kill Kay, and it was believed that finding her wouldn't have been difficult, given that she was on a dead-end road near the country club and Bob was familiar with the area. Further investigation revealed that Bob had knowledge of details about Kay's death that had not been publicly disclosed. When he was initially told of her death, Bob mentioned she had been run over by a truck, even though this information had not been released. He also made several incriminating statements, such as admitting to accidentally killing her and expressing a desire to commit insurance fraud by burning down their house and making it look like an accident. Bob had even previously told a friend that he had been reading a mystery novel and planned to commit the perfect murder. Additionally, evidence of a struggle inside Kay's truck, bruises on her body caused by human hands, and skid marks on the road and her body indicated that she had been run over deliberately, not in an accident. In July 1990, Bob was convicted of Kay's murder and sentenced to 20 years in prison. He later appealed his conviction, and in early 1992, A judge shortened his sentence to time served in exchange for a guilty plea to second-degree murder. Bob was given 15 years of probation and released from prison. "29-year-old Donna Callahan, a convenience store clerk at the Sunshine Junior Food Store in Gulf Breeze, Florida, was 3 months pregnant and the mother of a 2-year-old daughter when she disappeared on the night of August 6, 1989. Donna had recently started the job in late July after her boyfriend, Danny Knight, lost his job. She was working the 3 p.m. to midnight shift, even though she was not originally scheduled, as a co-worker had called in sick. Around 11 p.m., she called her friend, who was babysitting her daughter, and a witness reported seeing her behind the counter at 11:30 p.m. Sometime between then and midnight, she vanished. Donna was expected to close the store at midnight and set the burglar alarm, but when she failed to do so, the alarm company called the store. After getting no answer, they contacted Donna's manager, who found the store unlocked and empty. Her purse and keys were left on the counter, and her car, with her gun inside, was still parked outside. Despite extensive searches of the surrounding area, no trace of Donna was found, and authorities believe she had been abducted. Donna was not the first convenience store clerk in Florida to disappear during the graveyard shift. Just 5 weeks later, on September 18, 1989, 36-year-old Darlene Messer was abducted from a store in Lake City and was found bludgeoned to death 2 days later. Then, on February 4, 1990, 26-year-old Deborah Poe disappeared from a convenience store in Orlando. Like Donna, there were no signs of struggle at the scene. Following Donna's disappearance, her parents traveled from New York to Florida to help search for her, and Danny Knight also participated in the search. Donna's parents eventually moved to Pensacola in March 1991 to continue their search. Initially, they suspected Danny might have been involved in her disappearance, but his work records confirmed that he had been working that night. Donna had also recently had a confrontation with a customer at the store, a man she had kicked out after an argument with another customer. The man had threatened to kill her, and after her disappearance, he made claims to others that he had buried her under a concrete slab, but he was later ruled out as a suspect. In 1992, Donna's parents requested that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement reopen the investigation. Special Agent Dennis Haley took charge of the case and began re-examining the evidence. In the spring of 1993, he was contacted by a guard at a Florida prison, who told him that an inmate, 25-year-old William Alex Wells, had confessed during a Bible study to killing a woman. Wells had been imprisoned since October 1991 for assault and kidnapping a woman at knife point, and the guard believed Wells was talking about Donna. Wells refused to speak about the case, but the informant provided details that led Agent Haley to believe he was indeed the killer. Wells reportedly confessed to abducting and killing Donna, then burying her on his family's property. A search was conducted on Wells' parents' property, 5 miles northeast of Defuniak Springs, but although a cadaver dog alerted to a suspicious mound of dirt, no remains were found. Agent Haley suspected that Donna had been buried there, but moved to another location. Later, Wells' half-brother, Mark Allen Reeb, was approached by Agent Haley. Reeb eventually admitted that Wells had shown him Donna's body in the trunk of his car the night she disappeared, and he further stated that Wells had buried Donna on their parents' property. In October 1994, Wells was convicted of robbing a convenience store and sentenced to 30 years in prison. In March 1995, he was charged with murder, armed robbery, and kidnapping in connection with Donna's case, following Reeb's statements and the information from the prison informants. The following year, Reeb was admitted to a mental hospital after threatening suicide, and in July 1996, shortly before Wells' trial began, his mother suggested to Wells' attorney that he could confess to the crime if given a plea deal. Wells eventually agreed to a plea deal, in which he would avoid the death penalty in exchange for a no-contest plea to Donna's murder. He confessed to Agent Haley that he and Reeb had planned to rob Donna's store that night. Reeb abducted Donna at gunpoint, forced her into the back of their car, and strangled her as she begged for her and her unborn child's lives. Afterward, Wells helped Reeb bury Donna's body on their parents' property. Wells later led investigators to the wooded area where Donna's body was found, and dental records confirmed her identity. Wells was given 2 consecutive life sentences in prison as part of the plea deal. In May 1997, Reeb was arrested for Donna's murder after an inmate told police that Reeb had confessed to the crime. In May 1998, Reeb admitted to the murder and pleaded no contest to first-degree murder, receiving a life sentence without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Just months after beginning his sentence, Reeb confessed to having killed 13 women, including Donna. He detailed the murders of other women, such as Bonnie Gail Rither, Pamela June Ray, Jackie Bryant, Lindsay Sams, and Rhonda Taylor, and provided details about the cases that had not been released to the public. Although Reeb later recanted his confessions, Agent Haley believes he was responsible for at least 7 of the murders, with Wells helping in at least 2, including the murder of Deborah Poe. In August 1996, Donna's remains were cremated, and her family held a funeral service for her. Donna's parents passed away without seeing justice served, but the case was ultimately solved, with both Wells and Reeb held accountable for her murder. Julie Cross, a 26-year-old woman from San Diego County, grew up facing hardship after both of her parents passed away by the time she was 10 years old. Raised by her brother, who was a reserve police officer, Julie went on to earn a degree in criminal justice. In 1976, she became a police officer in San Diego. During her training, she met Cheryl Myers, a fellow recruit, and the two became close friends. After working for the San Diego Police Department for over 2 years, Julie applied to join the Secret Service, fulfilling a lifelong dream. In October 1979, she entered the agency, which is well known for its role in protecting the president, but also investigates counterfeiting and monetary crimes. On June 1, 1980, she was transferred to the Secret Service's Los Angeles Anti-Counterfeiting Squad. Before leaving for Los Angeles, Julie confided in Cheryl that she had a bad feeling, fearing something bad would happen to her there. On the evening of June 4, 1980, Julie and her partner, Agent Lloyd Bowman, were investigating an apartment in Westchester where a suspected counterfeiter was believed to be living. While parked in an unmarked car near Los Angeles International Airport, they observed a car slowly drive past them. A few minutes later, the same car passed them again and then parked down the street. Shortly after, 2 African-American men exited the car and entered a nearby apartment complex. After about 5 minutes, the men reappeared, got back in their car, and drove away. Around 10 minutes later, the car approached the officers. The agents identified themselves as law enforcement, but the driver held Lloyd at gunpoint, ordering Julie to drop her weapon, which she refused to do. Lloyd attempted to use the police radio, but the car wasn't turned on, rendering it useless. The passenger reached into the agent's car and grabbed a shotgun. As the driver and Lloyd struggled over the weapon, Julie drew her gun, but during a struggle with the passenger, she was disarmed. The passenger then shot Julie multiple times with the shotgun as she attempted to jump into the back of the car. The driver attempted to shoot Lloyd, but missed. The passenger also tried to shoot him with the shotgun, but missed as well. Lloyd, pretending to have been shot, managed to escape, and the 2 suspects fled the scene. Several witnesses saw the suspects leave. Lloyd went to get help, but by the time other agents arrived, Julie had succumbed to her injuries. The police investigation found a pair of eyeglasses near the scene, but little other evidence, as the sounds of gunshots may have been drowned out by low-flying jets from nearby LAX. Authorities believe that Julie's murder was likely a robbery gone wrong, rather than connected to the counterfeiting operation they had been investigating. Despite multiple leads, no suspects were immediately identified. The case remained unsolved until 1992, when a breakthrough occurred. Andre Stephen Alexander, who had been arrested for a 1978 triple murder in Palms, California, was identified as a possible suspect in Julie's death. Detective Richard Buck Henry, who had known Alexander from his school days, recognized him as a match for the composite sketch of the passenger in Julie's case. In a search of Alexander's parents' home, police found a leather jacket and knit cap that matched the description of the clothing worn by the passenger on the night of the murder. Traces of blood were also discovered on the jacket. Further investigation revealed that Alexander had worn glasses identical to those found at the crime scene. His optometrist confirmed that Alexander needed glasses for nearsightedness, and the glasses at the scene had the same prescription. When asked to participate in a live lineup, Alexander refused, becoming angry and belligerent. Lloyd later identified Alexander as the passenger from a photo lineup. A witness also testified that Alexander had been driving a faded brown car with a lighter-colored top, matching the description of the vehicle driven by the suspects. Additionally, a former girlfriend of Alexander's testified that he had shown up at her house on the night of the murder, covered in blood and carrying a bloody shotgun in a bag. He told her he had killed someone near the airport that night. This girlfriend also claimed that Alexander's family had pressured her not to testify. The investigation also pointed to Terry Brock, who was identified by Lloyd as the second suspect. Brock had several ties to Alexander. In 1980, Brock's sister had been Alexander's girlfriend, and Brock had a child with Alexander's sister. The two men had been close friends and neighbors as children, and Alexander had Brock's phone number in his 1991 address book. The night of the murder, Brock had been at his girlfriend's house, where he expressed concern about a news report on the murder of a female Secret Service agent near the airport. Brock's girlfriend also recalled that Brock had a .38 caliber revolver 2 weeks before the shooting. After police reopened the case, Alexander attempted to contact Brock, telling others he wanted to make sure Brock wasn't talking to the police. However, it is unclear if Brock was ever charged in connection with the crime. In 1996, Alexander was convicted of Julie's murder and sentenced to death. In 2010, Alexander appealed his conviction, but the state court upheld it. Julie Cross was the first female Secret Service agent to be killed in the line of duty since the agency's inception in 1865. The case, which had remained unsolved for over a decade, was finally resolved with Alexander's conviction, bringing some sense of justice to her tragic death. "19-year-old Carson Prince grew up in the quiet town of Maumelle, Arkansas, as the oldest of Tom and Suzanne Prince's 3 children. Her early life seemed idyllic, but everything changed when her parents divorced when she was 13. The divorce deeply affected Carson, but she managed to overcome the emotional turmoil and achieve great things. She earned a scholarship to the University of Arkansas and appeared destined for success. However, during her sophomore year, she made the unexpected decision to leave school and move back in with her father. Despite her detour, Carson remained determined to continue her education, and on April 28, 1999, she told her father that she planned to pick up registration forms to re-enroll at the university that fall. That morning, Carson left home around 11:45 a.m., according to their housekeeper, with plans to secure her academic future. Less than 30 minutes later, multiple drivers on Interstate 85 near Little Rock were horrified to witness a terrifying scene unfold on the Arkansas River Bridge. A white Ford pickup truck was speeding recklessly, swerving across lanes, while a female passenger inside appeared to be struggling to escape the vehicle. Witnesses watched in shock as the woman was violently thrown from the truck at more than 70 miles per hour, her body crashing onto the pavement. Emergency responders rushed her to the hospital, where doctors identified her as Carson Prince. Tragically, despite efforts to save her, Carson succumbed to massive head injuries within hours. Her devastated parents, Tom and Suzanne, were notified of her death, and what began as a hopeful day turned into an unimaginable nightmare. The Arkansas State Police quickly launched an investigation into Carson's mysterious death, and their first clue came when her Ford Bronco was discovered abandoned on the side of Interstate 430, just half a mile from where she had been thrown from the truck. Strangely, the vehicle's gas tank was completely empty, even though a gas station was within walking distance of the location. Investigators were puzzled by this discovery. Why would Carson have been heading in the opposite direction of her planned errands? And why hadn't she simply walked to the gas station for help? Witnesses reported seeing a young, white male parked next to Carson's Bronco in a white Ford pickup truck, holding a gas can and engaging in conversation with her. The fact that Carson entered the stranger's truck voluntarily baffled her family, who insisted that she would never get into a vehicle with someone she didn't know unless she was forced or knew the person. As the investigation deepened, authorities learned that Carson had been involved in a tumultuous relationship with a man she had met while working at a local country club. Her friends had warned her about him, describing him as controlling and dangerous, but Carson seemed reluctant to cut ties with him. It was revealed that he was a suspected drug dealer, and rumors circulated that he may have been using her car to deliver drugs. The day before Carson's death, she had shown up at her mother Suzanne's home, visibly upset. Her boyfriend had been arrested on drug charges, and Carson, distraught, accused Suzanne, who worked as a deputy district attorney, of being involved in his arrest. Suzanne denied any involvement and, fearing that Carson's boyfriend might be lurking outside, asked her to leave for her own safety. Less than 12 hours later, Carson was dead. Although authorities initially focused on Carson's boyfriend as a suspect, he was eventually cleared of any involvement in her death. However, Carson's murder remained a mystery, and authorities continued searching for the driver of the white Ford pickup truck. The suspect was described as a white male in his 20s, with medium height and sandy brown or blonde hair. Witnesses noted that the truck had the word Ford painted in red on its tailgate and an Arkansas license plate with the numbers 274. Despite widespread media coverage and several tips, the man and his vehicle remained elusive, frustrating both police and Carson's grieving family. The case received national attention and was featured on true crime shows such as America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries, but leads continued to dry up. For years, the question of who killed Carson Prince lingered without answers, until October 2004. When a man named Stephen Talley walked into the Perry County Sheriff's Department and confessed to being responsible for Carson's death. His confession was both chilling and deeply disturbing. Talley claimed that he had spotted Carson on the side of the road and stopped under the guise of offering help. In reality, he planned to kidnap and sexually assault her. According to Talley, Carson quickly realized something was wrong and panicked. She told him that her father, Tom, was the mayor of Little Rock and warned that if anything happened to her, he would haunt Talley for the rest of his life. Enraged by her defiance, Talley struck Carson in the head with a crescent wrench. When she attempted to escape by jumping out of the truck, Talley pulled out a gun to stop her, but during the struggle, she fell from the moving vehicle and died from her injuries. Talley's confession didn't end there. He also admitted to murdering 16-year-old Barbara Leggett and her 25-year-old boyfriend, Christopher Barnes, who had vanished in June 1999. Barnes's body was found a few weeks after their disappearance, but Barbara remained missing until Talley's confession led police to her skeletal remains. Investigators soon confirmed that Talley matched the description of Carson's assailant, and they discovered that he owned a white Ford pickup truck matching the one seen at the crime scene. However, Talley had altered his truck after Carson's death, removing certain items and modifying its appearance to avoid detection. His wife later revealed that he had made suspicious comments about Carson's death, expressing concern that someone might report him to the police because his truck matched the description of the vehicle involved in the incident. Talley also lied to his wife, claiming that he had not been in Little Rock on the day of Carson's murder. With overwhelming evidence against him, Stephen Talley pleaded guilty to all 3 murders and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His confession finally brought closure to Carson Prince's family, who had spent years searching for answers. However, the tragic reality remained. Carson's life had been cut short by a predator, and the bright future she had worked so hard to achieve was stolen in an instant. Bonnie Hyam's disappearance on January 6, 1993, sent shockwaves through Jacksonville, Florida. However, her father, Robert, immediately dismissed the notion that anything nefarious had occurred. Oddly, he suggested that she may have voluntarily vanished and expressed confidence that her husband, Michael Hyam, had no involvement. His stance was perplexing to many, especially to Michael's aunt, Eve Hyam, who was convinced that Michael played a key role in Bonnie's disappearance. Both Michael and Bonnie had worked for Eve Ann and her husband at the time, and even had witnessed firsthand Michael's abusive behavior toward Bonnie. He was known to verbally berate her at work, and his aggression occasionally turned physical. One incident involved him slamming Bonnie's hand in a car door. Despite the abuse, Bonnie had begun to quietly plan her escape. For several months before her disappearance, she had taken careful steps to prepare for a new life away from Michael. She secretly opened a bank account in her name and had the statements sent to her workplace to avoid detection. When Michael discovered the account, he was furious and demanded that she close it, which she did out of fear. But even after closing the account, Bonnie remained determined to leave. She had begun squirreling away money with friends, placed a deposit on an apartment, and tried to enroll their young son, Aaron, in a new preschool. On the evening of January 6th, Bonnie returned home from work around 7:30 p.m. She had plans to visit Evine's house at 8 p.m., but those plans changed after a fight with Michael. At around 8:30 p.m., Bonnie called Evan in tears, telling her she couldn't come over. She was clearly upset, and Evan knew something was wrong. The next morning, Michael called a co-worker to say that neither he nor Bonnie would be coming into work that day, claiming that Bonnie had left the house the previous night and never returned. That same morning, her purse was found discarded in a dumpster behind a red roof in Jacksonville. Her credit cards, money, identification, and other belongings were all still inside the purse. When authorities informed Michael about the discovery, his reaction was troubling. Rather than appearing concerned or distraught about Bonnie's disappearance, he seemed more focused on the fact that she had been hiding money from him. He didn't seem to care about her whereabouts or well-being, raising suspicions about his involvement. He later told authorities that Bonnie had left their home voluntarily around 11 p.m. on the night of her disappearance. He also claimed that he had his mother, Caitlyn, come over to watch Aaron while he went out looking for her. Oddly, he returned home just 45 minutes later and never reported her missing. Authorities quickly located Bonnie's car abandoned at the Jacksonville airport, which was close to the Red Roof Inn. Investigators noticed that the driver's seat was pushed far back, a position that would have been uncomfortable for Bonnie, who was much shorter than Michael. The placement of the seat suggested that someone of Michael's size had driven the car. They also discovered a shoe print on the driver's side floor, which they determined belonged to the last person who drove the vehicle. The print matched a specific type of athletic shoe that Michael owned. However, Robert dismissed the shoe print as irrelevant. Despite mounting evidence against Michael, Robert remained steadfast in his belief that Michael was innocent and that Bonnie was still alive. But Evan disagreed. She believed Michael had killed Bonnie during a domestic dispute and that their son, Aaron, had witnessed the crime. After Bonnie's disappearance, Aaron made chilling statements to a child psychologist, claiming that his father had killed his mother and forced him to come along when he disposed of her body. While Robert discredited Aaron's testimony, investigators believed that his statements couldn't be ignored. Authorities focused their investigation on Michael, who remained the prime suspect. They believed that he had an accomplice who helped him cover up the crime, but no charges were filed for years. The case went cold until one of Aaron's claims as a child was verified in 1995. He had told psychologists that after killing Bonnie, Michael had thrown a shotgun out of their car while crossing a bridge. Aaron later identified the specific bridge to his foster mother, and investigators found the shotgun in the water below. Tests confirmed that it had been there since the time of Bonnie's disappearance. Additionally, the shotgun matched another gun found in Michael's home. With no sign of Bonnie, she was declared legally dead in 1999. Meanwhile, Aaron was adopted by his foster family and changed his last name to Fraser. Michael's parental rights were terminated after a judge deemed Aaron to be at risk of further abuse. As he grew older, Aaron never wavered from his belief that his father had killed his mother. He and his adoptive family filed a civil lawsuit against Michael, seeking damages for Bonnie's wrongful death. In 2005, a civil court judge found Michael liable and ordered him to pay $26.3 million in damages. During the case, Aaron recalled helping Michael hide Bonnie's body when he was just 3 years old. His sister confirmed that Aaron's story never changed over the years, noting that he always said the same thing: "Daddy shot Mommy in the stomach." Aaron's chilling testimony was supported by drawings he made as a child, depicting Michael shooting Bonnie. In 8th grade, Aaron wrote a haunting essay describing his mother's murder and how his father's parents had helped him cover it up. In a twist of fate, Aaron uncovered the key piece of evidence that would finally solve the case. In December 2014, Aaron was renovating the Jacksonville home where he had once lived with Michael and Bonnie. As he removed a concrete slab in the backyard, he made a grisly discovery, a fragment of a human skull. Investigators identified the remains as human and later confirmed through DNA testing that they belonged to Bonnie. More of her remains were found in the same area, along with a .22 caliber shell casing. At the time of Bonnie's disappearance, Michael owned a rifle of that caliber. Adding to the suspicion, investigators found that a lease agreement for the property from 2000 specifically prohibited renters from doing any landscaping or digging in the backyard. On August 24, 2015, Michael Hyam was arrested and charged with Bonnie's murder. He was extradited to Jacksonville, where he pleaded not guilty. His trial faced several delays, but finally began on April 8, 2019. The prosecution called multiple witnesses, including Aaron, who bravely testified against his father. Several family members and 2 jailhouse informants also took the stand, with the informants claiming that Michael had confessed to killing Bonnie and burying her body. One of them testified that he feared for his safety while sharing a cell with Michael. Michael took the stand in his own defense, denying any involvement in Bonnie's disappearance and murder. However, the jury didn't believe him. On April 12, 2019, Michael Hyam was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison on May 21, 2019, bringing an end to a decades-long search for justice for Bonnie Hyam.